All right, we're flowing. Tara's having a day.
It's like
I'm not going to
what?
ask you to everybody's well and healthy, but she's having a day, and
Yes.
it's quite appropriate for the subject we're going to be discussing today. But we'll get into that in a little bit. Um, but otherwise, how is everything apart from your Tara's very bad day? Isn't that a book? Someone's very bad day or a movie?
Alexander, which is actually my son's name.
Yeah, that's right.
It's like perspective, right? And in the perspective of things, everything's okay. Everything's going to work out, but it's like such a waste of time. And when you're
Yeah,
like, we're flowing, I'm like, yeah, it's basically lava flow right now for me. Um,
steam coming out of your ears. I'm
yeah.
having one of those days too, if it's any consolation. The
Oh,
kids are home for
good.
spring break, and when you're trying to work and have the kids home all day,
hmm
it's ridiculous.
I
So,
almost messaged you like, because I literally just hung up the phone with Amerigas, and I'm like, I don't know. I don't know if I'm good to be on the pod right now. And then I'm like, you know what? No, like this is my commitment. My commitment is to us.
yeah,
I'm out of the shower. I was late, trying to get. Thought I was going to be ready and on time, and then all of a sudden, here I have to deal with this again. And I messaged you, right? I'm going to be 5 minutes late. I'm going to dry my hair and I'm going to show up because that's what we do.
yeah.
And that's what leaders do. That's what people do that are accountable to each other and for each other. And I don't want to let you down and I don't want to let me down.
Hell yeah. I'm not
So
in my usual recording studio today, as you can
I know
see. I'm
that.
home, and again, I was kind of like, I could be pissed off that I'm doing this from home. Have my regular mic and everything, but You know, I'm I live in a beautiful complex. I mean, you can see behind me, it's very nice.
Yeah.
Everything's nice and landscaped. I should be grateful. I am grateful.
hmm Good.
That's how we roll around here.
This is how we roll. And this is where I go to, do we really believe all the shit that we say? Um,
Exactly. Or do you live the yeah, do you live it?
Do you live it? Because now here's the test, right?
Yeah.
God, the universe, whenever they're going to test you, hey, it's easy to talk a good game.
Yeah.
It's easy to coach people about mindset and this and that. But the test is like, oh, yeah, do you really believe that? And
Yeah.
okay, you're having a moment. I literally yesterday morning, because there was some other stuff going on, um, had a couple seconds in bed. I'm like, I don't want to get out of bed. I do not want to get out of bed. And then I'm like, that's not what I do. Like, there's no option to stay in bed. Like, get up, go do what you need to do, even when you don't feel like it. There's people that are depending on you. There's things that you've committed to doing. Staying in bed isn't going to do anything. So I have a little pity party for a second. I was, teary-eyed most of the day yesterday, and then this major thing hits when I'm already like at my wits' end. And then the word resilient came up to me because you're like, what are we going to talk about? And I'm like, oh my god, I can't even think about that. And every company that Sam and I have been speaking to, whether it was keynote or leadership development or culture work, this word resilience has been like in my universe the past month, and it's not a word that I'm not used to hearing, but I was almost rejecting it. I'm like, oh man, I'm like tired of being revered for my resilience. Like, I don't want to be resilient anymore all the time. Like, I want to be revered for being soft and calm and peaceful.
Meanwhile, you're about to throw a chair through the window.
Uh, it's listen, I will not deny that, right? High D, and again, I never blame it on this. A high D Italian woman, there's a there's some fierceness there.
Yeah, I can only imagine. I can't imagine you would ever impart the wrath of Tara Stone onto me. Because I'm a soft, gentle-hearted lion of the jungle.
You are.
Well,
Yeah.
no, I can lose my shit, especially when
Yeah.
I think I've said before, if it's about my kids or my family,
Yes.
I can
Mess with
I
it.
can get angry, but I've learned to just let it go, and it's kind of along the lines of what we're talking about today, actually. So it's kind of a good segue. Yeah, we're continuing our commitment series based on Sam stuff. Um, Which book is the best book for listeners to read? This is because I think this has been featured in a couple of his books, right?
Yeah, so I would say probably No Matter What, um, is
I
a
think the one I
great
read was I Am Accountable.
I Am
Is that right?
Accountable.
Okay.
Yep. I Am Accountable no matter what, Pivot, and, The Accountability Advantage. Those are kinda like they're all good, but around this kind of conversation and leadership, accountability being the highest form of leadership, um, like, we teach a lot of this from the facilitation of No Matter What.
See,
Um,
pivot is interesting. I feel like Ross from Friends
I
has just
know.
completely ruined that word for me now. Every time I
The
hear it.
meme of them with the couch pivot.
Yeah.
There's so many good, and I mean, I have to mention it, just Momentum, which is the newest book, which is the first book that's really every book is geared towards you as a leader and as a human being, but really more in the corporate culture sector. Momentum is really, I think his it's not a departure because it's really a compliment, but it's the first book that's come out, and I think that we're gonna with the next book coming out, and then he and I are in talks about, um, basically love and leadership. Um, I think we're gonna see more of the work a little bit more into the, really the individual holistic person. So, I
Yeah.
love all the books. Momentum is my favorite at the moment. It happens to be the most recent. But we teach so much core stuff from, I Am Accountable no matter what, Pivot, and, the accountability advantage is what we really do a lot of work with, the corporate groups with leadership development.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So just yeah, that's just a little side. If maybe I'll put a link to it in the notes.
Yeah.
If you guys want to explore this in more detail. But the next commitment that we're going to, and I love this one because I think this was a real, there's that word again, pivotal moment for me in my life
Mhm,
when I just let go and committed to this. So the commitment is to commit to embrace faults and failures as well as opportunities and successes.
mhm.
When you own everything that happens to you, I can't. I generally. I was thinking about this before we recorded. I don't know how to put into words how freeing it is when you let go of the victimhood. When you let
Mm.
go of feeling
Uses.
like everything is against you. It completely changes your whole paradigm of how you see life. And we're obviously going to dive into it, but this one for me is such a big life lesson for people, and I come across people all the time who live in this world of it's someone else's fault, and yes, maybe it is,
Mm,
but then you let it affect you, so that's where the buck stops.
yeah. From the intention of the book, it's like, as a leader, it's kind of like that standing by your own side, but really standing by your team as well. Like, when we win, we all win. And when we fail, we all fail when one of us fails. And we need to embrace that. Um, and it's interesting because it says faults and failures as well as opportunities and successes. But I really, and I think you agree, every failure and even every fault to me, it is truly an opportunity. Now, not every opportunity is worth taking, but it's worth looking at and saying, "Okay, where is the opportunity here? Is there a learning opportunity? Is there an opportunity to, start fresh?" There is a Martin Luther King Jr. quote that came up yesterday, actually, when we were with our accountability advisors. We do a weekly call, and we're actually running through the 10 commitments right now, and we are at commitment number 9, which, oh gosh, and now I'm drawing a blank. And in that, one of the things that came up was a Martin Luther quote, and it's valuable here. So I'm going to pull it up real quick because I want to share it, and I believe that it is valuable. So you can talk for a second while I find this. I got it, actually. So Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. We must accept finite disappointment, but we must never lose infinite hope. And that was, I needed to hear that last night. Like, it's okay to be disappointed. It's okay to have expectations, right? We're mostly only disappointed because of our own expectations. Um, and so finite disappointment, like, we just have to embrace it, like embracing the faults and failures and the opportunities and successes. But we can't let it harden us to the point that we give up on hope, right? As a leader, it is our job to keep the hope. When all hope is lost and all hell is breaking loose, and that's what the commitment is, like standing by you when all hell is breaking loose. And whether your title is leader or not, we all know where the leaders are, whether it's, titled or relational, um, or your children or your spouse, and they're looking to you. How are you reacting? How are you responding? If you've lost hope, if you've lost all calm, if you've lost all control, then the people that lean on you most, like, they're going to freak out.
Yeah, exactly.
So, when you hear that commitment, what does it mean to you?
Like I said, it's the big thing for me is just is it's about ownership. You can't fix what you don't own. You can't
Mm,
control what you don't own. Um, and I've been pretty kind of open about some of the situations I've come across in the last 5, 10 years, and you know, I have a real issue with victimhood and people always just living in this perpetual state of it's someone else's fault. Poor me. You know, uh, if you have a bad business relationship and the person's a jerk, she did all this bad stuff. Someone stole from you. Your husband or wife is abusive. They cheated on you. Okay, what did I do in that situation to how can I own the situation? Maybe just the fact that all right, I allowed that person into my life. I didn't do my due diligence on this person. I didn't test the relationship enough before we got married or before we entered into business together or anything like that. Once you own that, you can change the future of it. It won't happen to you again because you've learned the lesson of, all right, I own that failure, so I'm going to make sure it doesn't happen again. I'm going to test that relationship. I'm going to
mhm,
ask the right questions. Um, Whereas you could sit for 2 or 3 years and blame it on everybody else
mhm.
and not learn from it, and it's going to happen again. It's going to happen again. And I think I'm not going to say what I really want to say. I think a
Say
lot
it.
of people no, because I because I think, and we'll go into this in a little bit too, that people are very quick to jump into their feelings instead of just critically thinking about things. But I think there's a lot of messaging around abuse and adultery where it's kind of like encouraged to everybody gather around the poor person this has happened to. And again, I'm
Mm,
not I'm not advocating for for
mm,
any of these bad things to happen, but it's like there are I just would love to turn around and say, all right, were you not paying attention to your spouse? Were you not doing enough in the relationship? Like, what was your part in this?
mhm,
I have this huge problem with we've almost become too soft. To your point
mm,
earlier, just that, and I to me, I just feel like you have to own every circumstance, no matter even like, and I'm not saying like there's always blame, but
mhm.
I don't have to sit and stew on that. If I, at the minute I say, all right, well, I let that person into my life. All right, it's done. They're not in my
Right.
life anymore. Cut out.
Well, that's the key right there, right? Once you realize it, once you realize like something isn't healthy, and maybe you didn't do anything, and maybe you did do something, right? There's typically always DNA on both sides. I think people that are listening, or you can say, well, I love the person, right? And I put up with it, and I hope that they would change. And I've experienced mental and physical abuse in a relationship. To the point where people that knew me would be like, there is no way you would have stayed in a relationship like that. And then meanwhile, I found myself really deep in a bad situation. And I think the part of taking ownership about it was that I had a choice, right? I could either stay in the environment or leave the environment. And that's where, right, the comfort zone is not really comfortable. It's the pain versus the pain that you don't know. And I think that's why people stay in abusive relationships, right? They have a hope. They want to believe that they're enough, that they see the good in the other person. And sometimes there's things that absolutely can be worked through. And you and Amy are a great example of that. I know you were, at each other's throats, I think fair to say at one point. Um, and you've found your way back, but I don't even know, and don't allow me to put words in your mouth, but I don't even know if it's a finding your way back. I think it's a finding your way to a new space, to a new level that you work from. Um,
Well, and to that point, I'm not going to obviously they're going to betray her confidence or anything, but how we reestablished our relation just on a platonic basis of like being good co-parents.
yeah.
I said I want to talk to you, and all I did was apologize. I apologized for everything I did. We could have sat there and said, well, you said this and you did this. It was like, no, 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 I did this and I'm sorry. I owned it, and it doesn't matter in any relationship or past relationship who was at fault more.
Hmm.
Doesn't matter as long as you own up to what you did. You know, not nothing that anyone else can do to you is gonna do any worse than how you feel about yourself in that moment.
Yeah.
And then you just overcome it. And that's another point of this is just it's being self-forgiving. It's allowing yourself to take those kind of failures on the chin
Mm.
and move on from them.
Yeah. And that's where I'll often go, like, are we working towards the same desired outcome, whether it's
Yeah.
a work relationship or a personal relationship? Like, ultimately, do we want to be together? Like, do we both want to work through this? Right? Because people often forget. I see this a lot in work relationships. Um, you attack so many questions and so many other things, and then we forget to ask, like, do you actually want to be here?
Right.
Do I actually want you here? We can't skip past that, because if the answers don't line up, then really anything you do is just delaying the
Yeah.
inevitable.
Yeah.
So when you can determine, like, yes, we want to be together. Okay, well, let's figure that out. And that doesn't mean living in the past.
No, exactly. And I knew I wanted to talk about this subject today, um, no matter what, but it really fits in with this whole kind of commitment. Um, the whole I don't know if you saw that kind of online back and forth everyone was getting into about RFK's comments on
Mhm.
autism and the speech he gave about how we're going to look into the causes of it.
I saw what
And
you posted on Instagram, but
yeah,
I didn't go past
well,
that.
and all I did on that was just say I'm grateful that someone's actually doing something about it now instead of burying their head in the sand. Um, but it was amazing. There was a big split within, and I follow a lot of accounts online of people in the autism community and stuff, and even people who have no skin in the game when it comes to it, chiming in saying how offensive it was that he said those things, even though it was taken out of context. He was talking about a specific part of the spectrum where these kids are, and there's a whole conversation around it. But what really I think is at the heart of it that people people are in denial about what has happened to the children and children in general, like ADHD and all of these things. Because the biggest reason that there's so much pushback about what he's saying and doing is that it means that we as parents made choices for our children that maybe weren't the best. Maybe it is the food we gave them. Maybe, hey, maybe it was vaccines. We don't know. Maybe we did make that choice to give something to our child that caused harm. Maybe it was the shampoo we were using and the toxins in that made its way to our children. We don't know what it was, but there's so much pushback about it because people are scared to say fuck. I made a choice. It was uninformed. It wasn't my fault, but at the same time, I made a choice to do something and it harmed my child.
It was
And
informed. It was ill-informed,
what
perhaps,
ill-informed
right?
and a
Like,
lot of it's
you're
because we
leaning
were
on your
told,
profession.
yeah, we're told this is safe to consume, this is safe to put on our skin, this is safe for your baby to have, the shit they put in baby formula. I wish I knew so much of what I know now back then, like the baby formula and stuff. There's fucking heavy metals in there.
Yeah,
And it's we were getting boxes of free shit from the doctors of that stuff. I'm like,
yeah.
if only I'd known. but I
Yeah.
didn't know. And but then I have to turn around and say, you know what? I made the choice. I gave that to my kid. And I think a lot of people have a problem with this where they're not able to step back and say, "Fuck, I did it." They're looking for blame. Blame him, blame them, blame the doctor. No, 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 no. It was me. It was a choice I made for my child, and I think it may have affected them. And that's why there's so much, you know, pushback. Like I said about all of the research that they're going to be coming out with, and they've got all this data now that they can start pointing to. And I think people are going to have a very hard time looking in the mirror and dealing with this. But we've collectively made some really bad choices because we listened to some bad information.
I remember after I had Alexander, let alone that they wanted to give like 41 different types of vaccinations on his first day alive, like the next
Yeah,
day. And I was like, no, like what? I think we agreed to like 12 because they scare you. And then I remember they wanted me to get a flu shot before I left the hospital, and I refused. And I had to sign a paper, basically, in not so many words, say acknowledging that I'm putting my child at risk because I'm deciding to not get a flu shot.
yeah,
Here you just carried this baby for 9 months. You love them more than anything. Your body has just gone through this, and you're like having to literally sign a paper saying that you acknowledge that you're putting your child at risk because you don't
yeah.
take the flu shot. Like, it's crazy. It's
And
crazy.
and yeah, and by the way, I'm neutral on vaccines. My kids have had, I think they're all up to date as of now. But
Mhm,
I'm neutral on it. I'm open-minded. I've seen evidence, I've seen
mhm.
research. There's enough anecdotal stuff out there. Again, people are going to be very surprised with and in denial about some of the data that's going to be coming out. But at the same time, if there's benefits to them and there's low risk, then I'm all for it. But again, I already know people who will be hearing this or seeing clips on social already with the labels. Oh, it's anti-vaxxers.
Yeah.
No, we're just critically thinking, and again, we're going back to owning choices and owning potential failures that we may have made for our children.
And asking questions and giving grace to others and to ourself. And there is no perfection. No one knows how to make the perfect decision every single time. You go off of data that you have, you go off of what you're being told, you go off of people that you rely on as professionals. And what you're saying is that even with all of that, ultimately it's still a decision that you made. And if something turned out wrong, and me may never know if it did or didn't, but where it's apparent that, hey, maybe I made the wrong decision, it's so devastating, right? Because you're not, your intention is to make the right decision. And sometimes you believe you're making the right decision, and then you get new information, and you're like, that was not the right decision. Um, but to regret is to suffer twice. And when it comes to your children, the people that you love and care about, to think that you have any hand in causing them any pain, suffering, whatever, that takes a lot to take that on. But it's because we're making it like we're so bad or we're not a good parent or we failed. No one's failed. We're all figuring this out. If you beat your child, yeah, you're a shitty parent. Sorry.
Yeah, and this goes into another topic I meant to bring up a couple weeks back. That show Adolescents, which is getting a lot of buzz right now.
Mhm.
You heard
I don't
about
know.
it?
Mm-mm.
It's
I did watch Love on the Spectrum, which I thought was super awesome.
yeah, that's good. But and again, it's interesting with that, right? It's great, and there's a lot of talk about Autism Month, and I don't like it in the sense that I definitely want to celebrate people on the spectrum, of course, my child being one of them. But at the same time, let's not celebrate the fact that this has happened to them. Like
Mm,
it's not a good thing that like you have autism. It's not a
mm,
good thing. So let's stop celebrating that.
mhm,
Let's celebrate the people that they are. And again, like
mhm.
I wouldn't change who my son is at all.
Yeah.
But if I could do anything to help him have more of a typical life, you bet I'm gonna fucking do it.
So
Right?
dig into that a little bit, right? So that, because that's so interesting to me the way you just said that. So because I don't understand, like, not celebrate that they have autism, right? Celebrate the people that they are. And that's, I see that. Like, let's celebrate the people that they are, the whole people that they are, the unique people that they are. Where do you what do you see as celebrating the, is it considered a condition? What is it considered?
I think it's a disease.
A
You
disease?
know, it's not an
Okay.
infectious disease, but it's a metabolic or a neurological disease. And you know, even Amy and I have differing views on that. She's obviously
Hmm.
very well educated in that space. But you know, yeah. Again, I don't like the idea of like it's like going, "Yay, cancer! Woohoo! Good for
Yeah.
you!" It's like no, let's celebrate people who have battled it and are dealing with it. Sure,
Hmm.
absolutely, tell their stories, but let's
Hmm.
not sit here and cheer it on. Like that's a little nuance that I think is really missing, and there's a lot of people in the communities I'm in that are have the exact same feeling as me. It's like let's not celebrate like you know, and the people getting offended by RFK's comments. I know people who have children that are, you know, banging their heads on the wall who, you know, they can't take them out in public.
Mm.
They're up all night with them because they're screaming, crying, and all of this stuff. I'm so grateful that my child is not like that, and
Mm.
hopefully stays on a trajectory that he won't be. Um, but those people exist, and
Yeah.
like, and I think for especially for those folks, they're sitting here going like, why are we fucking celebrating this?
Okay.
You
Yeah.
know? Like, yes, that we should be accepting of everybody and any kind of condition that they have, but at the
Hmm.
same time, let's not celebrate something that's not a good thing.
Hmm.
And I think people, you know, I don't think it's that the intention's bad. It's
Yeah.
just that there's, you know, it's very easy just to kind of cheer on from the sidelines instead of
Yeah.
saying, well, you know, let's do something about this.
So like that show Love on the Spectrum, because when I was watching that, I'm like, I wonder how this is received, in the autistic autistic community. And again,
Autism, yeah,
like I'm always so tentative and like what to say. Um, because I found it like so interesting and I thought it was amazing to see. What I really loved was seeing people really speak what they were feeling, right?
yeah,
Without barriers, which I think we could all do better at. So I thought there were some really beautiful parts of it, but I can see what you're saying. Like that's is it celebrating? Is it those are the participants there are definitely, pretty highly functional in their own
yeah.
life. A lot of them live on their own. Um,
No, like I enjoyed. I haven't watched the newest season. I've watched a couple of the seasons. It's very, you know, it's you know, and again, like I really hope that Braden gets to a point where he's able to date and things like that. We don't know
yeah,
yet. We just
yeah,
don't know. And again, I'm happy to celebrate those people for overcoming because it's you know they've overcome a lot of challenges to be where they are in life and be able to go out on dates and stuff like that, and what the families had to deal with.
hmm,
But yeah, just that whole thing, not the show, but just the whole thing to kind of tie that up and put a bow on it. I just feel like a lot of people are minimizing the challenges that
yeah,
families face, and it's
yeah,
not just the children; it's the families too.
yeah,
You know, and people were offended by the word. He said they were destroying families. Yeah, it fucking does destroy families, you know,
yeah,
and it's not. It, I wouldn't say my family's destroyed, but makes things a lot harder, like
yeah,
getting babysitters and the considerations you got to make of you know where you can go and what you can do. It's hard, you know,
yeah,
and again, yet, but and our family hasn't been destroyed, but there are a lot of families that have, and I'm not going
yes,
to take that away from them by being
yeah.
offended by a word. You know, let's deal with
We're
everything head
so
on, and
offended. We're like a society of being
yeah.
offended.
But
And
that's
there's
what I'm
some
saying,
offensive
and
things, but
yeah,
the more you dwell on it, the more energy you give it, the more you put it out there, you're just perpetuating the thing that's offending you. Like refocus. What
but
you
that,
focus on
yeah, exactly. It's
expands.
like,
Yeah.
and then come back to committing to owning the successes. Like, yeah, if my kid has successfully navigated some of the challenges with autism,
Mhm,
I'm going to own that and celebrate that. I'm not going to
mhm,
take it away from someone else who is dealing with that. And I think
mhm.
that was the whole thing with that. But to go back to the adolescence thing, show in England, you know, it's supposed to be like a documentary of all, you know, how bad things are for kids in school, and it's so real. It's based on really shitty data. Like the guy, it's very, it's propaganda. All right,
Mhm.
and God forbid you question it. They want to show it in all the schools in England. You know, it's about all these incel kids who want to hurt everybody because of they're not very good at talking to women. I'm like, it's just being a fucking teenager.
Right.
I grew up with acne, buck teeth. I had to wear
Yeah.
glasses. Like the only reason I wasn't bullied completely was because I was a good soccer player. The
Yeah.
only reason. and I was big for my age until I was like 13, 14.
Mhm.
And I just think I was having this conversation the other day with someone. I'm just like, again, it's not owning being a parent. Like, there is no way my kids are going to be influenced by something they see on TV over how I'm influencing them in the home, how I model life for them.
Mhm.
And it drives me crazy. Oh, you gotta watch this show. It's so scary what kids are. I'm like, no, that's just being a fucking teenager.
Yeah.
Why are
And we
we
don't
why are
teach
we making a big drama
resilience.
about it? We're kind of passing the responsibility on to the teachers and to the
Mm-mm.
um
Yeah.
to YouTube or
Yeah.
whatever.
Yeah. We've talked about that.
Yeah.
We don't teach resilience. It's from a and we talked about it on the last episode, right? Well, sometimes the most dangerous person is the person that loves you. Right? Sometimes the person that loves you that wants to keep you safe, that doesn't want to see you fail or doesn't want to see you go into pain, they're the ones that are saying, "No, that new business isn't a good idea." And it's coming from love. And I think the same for parents. Like we do a lot for our children. But we have to ask ourselves, like, where are we teaching resiliency, right? If we're going to go back to resiliency, where are we teaching our children that they can do hard things if we never allow them or put them in positions to do hard things? And now I'm saying protect them where you can, but we do so much. We're creating this this fear. We're creating these kids that can't deal with adversity without going to like an extreme, like a violence or completely withdrawing. Um, like we have to teach resiliency, and that's how our children will be successful. I remember there was a ton of death. We had so many deaths in the family as I was growing up. And really close people, my grandmother, my aunt, my stepdad. Um, Even though that sucked, I was very used to dealing with that. So in my 20s and my 30s and now beyond, when I deal with death or loss of someone, like I know how to deal with it because I've been faced with it. And I have friends that they've been super blessed. They've had really no loss. And now in their 40s or 50s, they're dealing with a loss or a loss of a parent, which is like I think even so much harder. And they're not equipped to handle it because they've never been faced with
Yeah. That's a huge, the all the fifth place medal winners medals. Not yeah, don't get me started on that. And
it.
it's true. And the other side of it is, we're not teaching them how to be resilient. We're also, as parents, I'm saying we, a collective we, I think you and I are particularly conscious of this, providing a safe space for your children to be vulnerable.
Yes.
Like why is your child going online and learning all this hatred instead of coming to you and talking to you about how they're feeling, you know? And I specifically remember this one night when I was about 16, I was having it was about girls, I think. It was like 16, 17. I think I was in between girlfriends. I always tended to have a girlfriend when I was after 16. I was one of those guys. But I wanted to go for a walk. And I guess how I closed the door kind of alerted my dad to like something's off with him.
Mm.
And I remember he kind of chased me down the street and then I tried to walk past him again. He just grabbed me and then gave me a big hug. My dad's not a very he doesn't display a lot of emotion.
Yeah.
So that was a
Not
big moment.
touchy-feely. He's an
Yeah,
English dad? Is he an English
yeah.
dad?
Well, he's American, but he's
Okay.
English now, basically. And then we just went back inside and sat and talked, and I just kind of, I don't even remember him saying anything that was profound or anything, but it was just the fact that I had that space just to pour it out. Whereas a lot of kids could have gone out, met up with some wrong uns,
Mhm.
done some stupid shit to let let relieve the stress,
Yeah.
and that's because they don't have a home that they can be vulnerable in.
Mhm. So important. And takes active work, not only to create that space, but I saw another picture today and it was like your child's first bully is the unhealed parent.
Yeah. Ooh.
And I was like, "Oh, geez." You're so really looking at yourself, where are you reactive? Where do you still need to do some healing and some work? Um, I actually just got chills everywhere with that. Um, I love that we talk about parent stuff, and this episode has definitely gone more towards parenting, way more than we expected. But It does take a tribe. People talk about like it takes a village to raise a child, and I'm always like, it takes a village to support a highly functional adult,
Yes.
and a parent. And this is where we need our people. We need our close friends around us. We need access to people to remind, like, you're doing an amazing job. Like, no, it's not perfect, but there is no perfect.
Yeah. Well, and same. We're kind of talking about parenting. I think this is the big problem, right? Is that people don't associate leadership with parenting.
Mm,
Like parents wanna uh I actually just commented on Dan Martell's post about this, and I've said it on here before. Like, I don't care about what grades my kids get at school. I
yeah.
couldn't give a fuck. I don't care where they go to college. I don't care what they major in. I want my kids to be good, polite, kind people. I want them to look out for each other and look out for other people. Um, that's the value I put on my children, not what grades they're getting or anything out. And a lot of parents would rather push that responsibility onto a teacher and get their value. Oh, my kid's on the honors list. Who cares? Take that sticker
Right.
off your fucking car. Your kid's a prick. She's rude. Like,
Take that sticker off your car, or I'm
yeah,
gonna
no one
ram you.
cares. But like, that's the value you're putting on your kid, and that means that
Yeah,
you're not being a leader because you're not teaching them the morals and the values of life. And yes, you can have
right.
both. I'm not
Yes,
saying you can't,
like
but
my
it's like
son.
we want schools to teach our kids how to be adults. No, you do it. You're the parent.
Well, you are doing it. It's either by default or by design. So they're watching you,
Yeah,
and so you're either teaching them how to be an adult by how you act, how you treat your partner, what you put importance on, how you prioritize. So you either do it consciously or unconsciously.
yeah.
I don't know. I got lost for a moment, but parenting is leadership. It's probably the biggest leadership.
The most important
Um,
role you're going to
yeah,
have in your life. Yeah, and,
yeah.
and I think unfortunately we've made it secondary to how we show up for work.
Well,
And and go
mhm.
ahead, go ahead.
Well, a lot of people don't take on the identity as a leader because they view it as something that they're not. They'll view it as someone who's like really out there in a big leadership role or that's really loud and robust. And I'm like, all leaders look different. You don't have to be this big aggressive entrepreneur to be a leader. So it's easy to kind of say, well, I'm not a leader, but you are, because you have impact and you have influence. And you're either using it for good or you're using it for bad. Now you can be a really crappy leader, and Sam would argue with me that not everyone is a leader. I believe everyone has the capacity to be a leader. There is no difference between how you lead your children and how you lead the people that you care about. If you're a true leader, leading from your heart, a servant leader, the love is different, but you have to have love for your people, and I mean love on a very broad spectrum, not with the typical. If you don't feel that way for your people that you are accountable for and accountable to, whether it's your child, your coworker, your spouse, your neighbor, you are never going to be the best version of yourself for them.
Did I tell you? Have I told the story in here before? I'll tell it again anyway. Um, this was before I stopped yelling at soccer games. When Mason was playing it. They were playing this team that were beating them like 6-7-0, and the other team's coach told them to stop scoring. They weren't allowed to score. They can only pass to each other.
Hmm.
And the kids just kept kicking the ball out. So like, oh, we can't score, we can't score. I was yelling at the coaches on the other side of the field. I was let them play. I said, what are you doing? Like, let them play. And it's like, you know, if Mason's team score, it's not a deserved goal. They
Mm,
let them score. So
mhm.
now you're telling these kids you're rewarding failure. And on this plus side of it, I'm a big believer in run the scoreboard up. We'll run it up. I don't
Yeah,
care if it's 25-0.
yeah,
Teach people what losing feels like.
yes.
Because as you said earlier, we're not preparing our kids that life is going to punch them in the fucking face, and they're not going to be ready for it. I do not let my kid beat me at soccer.
Right.
Sometimes he does. And when he does, he earned it. He
Yes.
scored more than me. I let more goals in.
Yep.
I'm not gonna let my children grow up not knowing what losing feels like. They
This
have
is
to
another
own their
perfect
failures.
example. We were at a softball tournament for one of Ben's sons, and they were stealing bases, running. They were like just like textbook, I guess,
Yeah,
really just doing awesome on the bases. And they're like, we normally are not the ones giving the lessons on base runnings. We're normally the ones getting taught what good base running looks like. And I'm like, and that's the reason that they're out there running the bases well is because they know what it feels like to be on the other side of it. They've watched another team do it and they've probably said like enough is enough. Like we don't want this feeling. So
yeah,
the losing, the failure, that's what teaches you how to win. That's what teaches you how to do it the other way. That's what puts that drive inside of you to go, yeah, like, no, I don't want to feel that way anymore. No more. So I'm going to push myself. I'm going to become better. I'm going to take more risk and I'm going to do the best that I can do
yeah.
because I don't
You know,
want to
and
get schooled.
I don't know if I've told this. I think I've told this story before. Um, there's another example of owning a mistake, and we haven't. I've realized we've focused entirely on owning your failures, but I think it's
Mm,
so important. It's to me the most important thing in life. I had these real estate clients that I was, always dropping whatever I was doing to go and reach, go and show them a place, and then they put an offer in somewhere, and I advised them, you've got to go above asking. There's going to be multiple offers. I've spoken to the listing agent. They told me it's got to be it. It's got to have this number in front of it. Wouldn't do it. Lost the bid. There was one time I had to bring Mason. He was in a car seat. I had to bring him because I couldn't
mm.
leave. Obviously, couldn't leave him alone.
He was in a what?
Um, car seat.
Oh, car seat.
Yeah, he was
I thought
like
you said
that
a
little.
carty. I'm like, what kind of English thing is that?
um, and then so that was like Thursday, Friday that they put that offer in, and they didn't get it. Um, it's like the Monday I reached out to them, said, "Oh, let's go and see these places." Get a response back from the wife. Oh, we actually put an offer in on this place. We went to an open house and we put an offer in with the listing agent. Of course, I was furious, and it was also at a time in my career where like I had all of these deals in the works. So like if they'd all come off, my career would have taken off. Like I
Mm,
had like 5 or 6 really good, well priced deals, and everything, of course, fell to shit. But in that situation, and it took me a few years to come to this mindset. It was like I was furious with them. How could they do this to me? I was so loyal to them, blah, blah,
mm,
blah. But now I'm just like, should have reached out on Saturday.
mm-hmm,
I didn't reach out on Saturday before they
mm-hmm.
went to any open houses. It's my fault.
Or had the conversation or yeah.
Yeah. And so guess what? Like, I never let that happen again.
Yep.
I was always in touch with people, and that's just how it is. And I had to own that.
Yep. And you either learn quick or you keep repeating the same mistake until you do
Yeah.
learn. And some people don't learn in this lifetime. And you look at Buddhism, like sometimes and several other religions, you got to keep coming back
Yeah.
until you learn.
And
Um,
I want to make sure before we do have to wrap up soon, so I got
yeah.
to jump on a call. But I want to make sure that people don't misconstrue the idea of owning your failures and beating yourself up about it.
Mm,
You have to own the failure and say, "All right, what do I learn from this?" and move
mhm.
on.
Move on.
There's no stewing.
No, and that's where it's important to keep other leaders and close people around you so that you don't sit and stew and sometimes you need a reminder like,
Yeah,
okay, pity party's over. Like you're too good to
yeah,
let this do what it's doing to you, right? It's like sometimes we do need each other to kind of help pull us out or shake us up a little bit. Um, so again, back to the people that you're around. Or if you got a lot of bunch of miserable people around you, misery loves company. It's one of the oldest adages. So,
yeah,
you can plenty of people that you can find to suck in and be miserable about with.
yeah. And you'll notice that there's those. All you do is talk negative.
Yeah.
You know. Then there's one thing to reminisce and kind of make fun of stuff and talk things out. But at the end of the day, it has to come back to you owning what happened, and that's that.
Yeah, well, and not being a victim and taking action.
Yeah,
So, mindset, taking action, We could wrap up a whole bunch of things, but it's all a gift.
Yeah.
The failures, the falters, the opportunities, the successes, the challenges. It's all part of this beautiful life that we get to live.
Yeah,
That we
and
get to wake up
I
every
will
morning and
I'll challenge anybody who's made it this far, number one. Number two, if there's anything that particularly I was saying along the autism stuff or anything like that that you particularly disagree with, more than happy to talk it out with you.
Mm,
Um, my sister kind of raised the point to me this weekend. She was like, you always say on the podcast you don't talk about your political beliefs and stuff like that. She was like, why don't you just stand up for what you believe in? And I think I mentioned it here before. It's because I know people come straight away with a label,
mhm.
and then if from there you're on the defensive. It's very difficult for me to express how I'm feeling if you think I'm a bigot or a racist or any of that shit. No one's ever called me a racist, but you know what I mean. Like it's very difficult once you've been in that position.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm very open to talking to people about stuff. So our job is and our intent is not to upset anybody. And I know we did talk about some taboo topics today. We got to talk. We have to
Invite
own.
conversation.
Yeah, that starts with owning your choices. Because it's very difficult to me to be upset with you if I own what I've done and said. What am I upset with you for?
And the value of having those conversations goes back to where we started, is that we make decisions and we stand on things based off of the information that we've received, we've gathered, we've researched. And by having continued conversations, sometimes we have different perspectives. Sometimes we're able to receive information that we didn't have before. And then you get to make the decision, okay, I still feel the same way, or, this is something I wasn't aware of before. So let me chew on this and dive into that a little bit. And maybe it does adjust how I feel. But if you're not
Yeah,
willing to have a conversation with someone that views things differently, if you're not willing to go into a conversation and say, it's okay if we don't change each other's mind at the end of this conversation, but we're willing to hear each other and hear some different perspectives, and then we get to make the decision. Does
yeah,
this just solidify where I stand, or does this maybe say, is this worth looking down another path? And that's
yeah,
the beautiful thing.
yeah. I learned that being in the fitness space because there was always new information coming along, and it and a lot of the time is like when it's actually there were times where I had to completely like when I stopped doing crunches and stuff with clients, I had to say to them, I made a mistake. Like
Mm,
I had this information, I've now received better information, and I don't want to be doing that with you anymore. It's not good for you.
yeah,
And that kind of set me up well for that. It's very important to be open to change.
absolutely. And doesn't make you wrong. You were doing the best with what you had
Yeah,
and what you knew and you fully believed it.
yeah,
Well, this was cool. My flow is not as lava hot anymore.
good.
I'm gonna go see if my
Dormant,
gas
dormant
meter's been
volcano.
locked.
Oh god, yeah. I wish I almost pressed record while you were ranting.
I
I was like, oh man, I want everybody to hear this story because everybody can relate to it. It's so infuriating when you're dealing with the utility companies.
beyond,
And
beyond.
again, it's like, and even with that, it's like it's not the person's fault on the other end of the phone.
Right,
And you could even step back and say, all right, I'm going to own the fact that maybe I should have triple, double, quadruple checked that there were no loose
right.
ends when I moved in or whatever, right?
Yep.
Like,
And I'm trying to
mm,
fix it. Tell me what I need to
yeah,
do. I'm trying to
exactly.
fix it. Ah, what a gift. Thank you, Amerigas, for the gift.
Well, open to sponsorship, Amerigas, if you fix this.
Well, thank you for being here, because our relationship was what I was like when it briefly popped in my mind, like, should we move the podcast? I was like, no, I'm showing up. I got to be there for my
Yeah,
buddy.
same here.
Yep. All right.
He could have easily said, can't do it today. Spring break.
All right, all you leaders out there,
Yeah, go
embrace
lead.
the faults and failures, the successes and the opportunities. Life is a gift. Until next time, bye for now.